Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans promised to tackle real issues, lower grocery prices, reducing energy costs, and addressing everyday concerns. But what's their real top priority? Renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Yes, you heard that right. And it's not just a joke, it's a legislative push led by Marjorie Taylor Greene. Today we'll dive into how this bizarre culture war move exposes the GOP's shifting priorities and why Democrats must act fast to set the record straight. So stay tuned for all the details. During his campaign, Donald Trump, alongside the Republican Party, promised to tackle everyday issues that impact Americans the most, such as reducing grocery prices and addressing rising living costs. However, in a surprising twist, their latest legislative focus seems to be something entirely different and far less practical. Instead of prioritizing economic relief, they've turned their attention to renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. This revelation stems from a recent comment made by Trump during a Mar-a-Lago press conference. The remark, seemingly offhand at first, has since been embraced by MAGA Republicans, including prominent figures like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Greene has even gone as far as drafting legislation to make this name change official, raising questions about the party's priorities. While some might dismiss this as a joke, the seriousness of the legislative action suggests otherwise. It's not just a passing comment. It has become a talking point that reflects the broader culture war narrative often pushed by certain members of the GOP. This approach starkly contrasts with their earlier promises to focus on kitchen table issues like lowering food prices or controlling healthcare costs. Trump himself has often made bold declarations about how easy it would be to fix these problems, assuring voters that such changes would happen so quickly it'll make your head spin. Yet now, as his words meet the reality of governance, these promises seem to be taking a backseat to symbolic efforts like renaming a body of water. This raises an important question. Is this the kind of leadership voters expected when they supported the MAGA movement? The focus on renaming the Gulf of Mexico might resonate with some, but for many, it highlights a concerning lack of attention to real, pressing economic challenges. As this unfolds, it's worth asking whether these actions reflect a shift in priorities, or if they reveal a deeper issue within the party's leadership strategy. This is where the stark contrast between rhetoric and governance becomes clear. Claims that Republicans are ineffective at governing are not just opinions. They are backed by evidence. Like the accomplishments Republicans often credit to Trump, many of them, upon closer examination, are actually successes inherited from the Biden administration. For instance, the transformative infrastructure projects under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, one of Biden's hallmark policies, are already starting to take shape. Yet Trump and his allies are already positioning themselves to claim credit for these efforts. Another prime example is the Inflation Reduction Act, a significant Democratic initiative that allowed Medicare to negotiate the prices of the first 10 prescription drugs. This monumental change, which directly benefits countless Americans, goes into effect this year. Yet Republicans, including Trump and figures like Marjorie Taylor Greene, are poised to claim this victory as their own, even though they had no involvement in its passage. The same pattern applies to other key developments like low unemployment rates and the $2,000 cap on out-of-pocket expenses for Medicare recipients. These are undeniably beneficial policies, but they stem from Democratic-led efforts. Nonetheless, Trump and his allies seem more than willing to misattribute these successes to their leadership. And quote, "Let's be crystal clear. This is no joke. Marjorie Taylor Greene is not playing around with a passing comment. She's pushing a serious bill. She claims that Mexican cartels are using the Gulf of Mexico for trafficking and smuggling, while the Mexican government allegedly ignores it. But rather than tackling these urgent issues with real policy solutions, Greene's response is to draft a bill to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. This is where their priorities lie. Not in solving real problems, but in symbolic gestures meant to dominate headlines. This kind of theatrics perfectly encapsulates the current Republican strategy. Shift focus to attention-grabbing culture war issues rather than addressing tangible concerns that impact Americans every day. Rather than lowering grocery prices, holding corporations accountable, or tackling skyrocketing healthcare costs, they prioritize superficial stunts designed to dominate headlines and distract from the lack of substantive policymaking. What's even more frustrating is the hypocrisy. While MAGA Republicans ignore real issues, they eagerly claim credit for the tangible successes of the Biden administration. Infrastructure projects, funded by Democratic policies, are rebranded as their own achievements. Prescription drug price negotiations under Medicare, made possible by the Inflation Reduction Act, suddenly Republicans act like they were behind it. Even the $2,000 out-of-pocket cap for Medicare recipients. Trump will take credit despite having no role in it. This is a strategy of denial, deflection, and opportunism. Republicans loudly criticize these policies while they're being implemented, only to pivot and claim responsibility for their benefits when it's politically convenient. It's not about governing or solving problems. It's about maintaining a narrative of success, even when that success belongs to their political opponents. Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman perfectly captured this dynamic when I spoke with him recently. He reinforced what we've long suspected. These elected MAGA Republicans have never been serious about addressing the real, everyday concerns of the American people. Issues like healthcare affordability, fair wages, and lower costs for essentials have never truly been on their agenda. Their focus has always been elsewhere, and their actions, or lack thereof, prove it. Elected Republicans don't care about the issues that directly impact your everyday life, your finances, your healthcare, or the challenges you face around the kitchen table. They'll happily try to convince you otherwise, especially when it's time to take credit for solutions they didn't create. But when it comes to actually using their political influence and resources to improve your quality of life, they're nowhere to be found. Instead, their priorities lie elsewhere, with their focus locked on culture wars and serving the interests of billionaires like Elon Musk, an unelected MAGA ally who wields more influence in Republican politics than many elected officials. Take Marjorie Taylor Greene's recent bill as an example. She's not a fringe figure in the GOP, she's a representation of what the party has become. Instead of addressing real problems like lowering costs or creating opportunities for working families, Greene is pushing legislation to rename the Gulf of Mexico. As absurd as it sounds, this isn't trolling or satire. They're actively talking about it as a serious priority. Congressman Dan Goldman highlighted the glaring lack of effort by Republicans to tackle substantial issues. There's no legislation to address healthcare costs, no plan to help with wages, and no strategy for dealing with inflation. Their focus is on media-grabbing culture wars because that's where they excel. They're masters of setting the narrative, dominating headlines, and distracting the public with polarizing topics. In that sense, they are formidable political opponents. But when it comes to actual governance, they fall flat. Governing requires more than sound bites and stunts. It requires hard work, strategic planning, and a commitment to public service. Republicans have made it abundantly clear that they're more invested in waging battles over symbolic issues than in using their power to make tangible improvements to people's lives. And yet, as they double down on these distractions, they expect the public to believe they're working on your behalf. It's astonishing how far elected Republicans will go to distract from the real issues facing American families. While they continue to focus on renaming the Gulf of Mexico, critical concerns like grocery prices, energy costs, and inflation remain unaddressed. Representative Scott, a highly influential member of the Armed Services and Rules Committee, still entertains the absurdity of renaming the Gulf instead of prioritizing meaningful policies that could actually benefit the people who elected him. Donald Trump's grand promises, resolving the Ukraine-Russia conflict within 24 hours, or making your head spin with quick fixes to grocery and energy prices have proven to be nothing more than empty rhetoric. Yet these theatrics continue to dominate their agenda, leaving real issues on the back burner. It's time to make some noise. Don't let Republicans continue to distract from the real issues. Like this video if you believe the focus should be on everyday economic challenges, not culture wars. Share this with others so they can see how the GOP is failing to deliver on their promises. And make sure to subscribe because this fight is far from over. Thanks for watching. If you believe it's time for change and that our leaders should focus on the issues that matter most, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content. Let's keep fighting for real solutions, not distractions. What's your next step in holding leaders accountable?